What's up, guys? Welcome to the Peer Review Podcast. My name is Kaleb Davis, and I have notes. I'm a little under the weather today, if you can't tell. A little stuffed up, got a cough going, but that's okay. I'm here. We're going to make things work. Today's going to be a quicker episode. I got to get out of here in about an hour. I have a networking reception for my business org, so excited to get to that. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get things started. So I have three topics that I'm going to kind of cover today. The two marquee games from last night, both in the NFL and NBA. So we had the Eagles versus the Ravens, which was an amazing star-studded game. You got two star-studded teams with two elite quarterbacks going at it. And also the two top rushing teams in the league. So it was exciting to see the run game as well. And then moving forward, we had the Cavs versus the Celtics, which was another amazing game. It had a playoff feel to it, sort of like the Eagles versus Ravens. Just because the two big dogs in the Eastern Conference were going at it. It was back and forth and just a great overall product. So I have a lot I want to say about that. And then I'm going to cap it off with a little recap from the Michigan versus Ohio State game, which another huge rivalry game and a crazy upset. So for the Eagles versus Ravens, the game finished in an Eagles win over the Ravens with the score finishing at 24-19. And I just want to start off by saying that the Ravens are 1-3 against division leading teams. So those three losses include the Steelers, the Chiefs, and now the Eagles. So they've been looking a little worrisome against the big dogs, I will say. I'm kind of going to break this game down, though, from both teams' perspectives, but I'm going to go quarter by quarter because I kind of felt like this game felt different throughout. Like, I was only able to catch the first quarter originally because I was driving back to school. And if you watched the first quarter, you would have thought the Ravens were going to completely dominate this game. It felt like they were in complete control. The Ravens came out with energy on both sides of the ball, and it kind of looked like they had the Eagles figured out early. Zay Flowers was doing his thing, getting a lot of touches, and was very active in the offense. Mark Andrews, he had a bunch of highlighting catches, and he had one big catch where he kind of had to jump up over three defenders, which he was just showing out. But they finally scored, and then Justin Tucker missed the extra point attempt. And I want you to kind of hold on to that because his name's going to come up a few times throughout this game, Justin Tucker. But also, their defense just did a solid job holding the Eagles to short drives. Like, they weren't able to get a lot going. There wasn't a lot of flow for them. And then on the Eagles front, like I just mentioned, they started off very slow offensively, and their defense wasn't doing a great job containing the Ravens. But then as you move on to the second quarter, that's where things started to shift a bit. And like I mentioned, the Ravens were in complete control if the game was only the first quarter. And if that's all that mattered, they would have won this game. But as things continued on, the same problems that the Eagles had in the first quarter kind of plagued the Ravens in the second quarter. They struggled on offense, and their momentum kind of halted after that missed extra point attempt. And they just couldn't get a stop against the Eagles on offense. Jalen Hurts, he started to find his rhythm. He was using his legs to extend plays, throwing short passes to kind of get his rhythm together. And there was a bit of Saquon Barkley thrown in there to kind of wear down the Ravens defense. But Saquon didn't even get going until the fourth quarter, really. But Hurts, he just kept doing his thing. He was throwing little mid-range passes right in the middle of the field and connecting with receivers. Just doing a great job. And I saw a fun fact after one of his QB sneaks, but the Eagles are now 23-28 on QB sneaks this season, so that has just been completely unstoppable for them. But in the second quarter, they had 2 touchdowns to take a control lead heading into halftime. Now, you come out in the third quarter, and the Eagles kind of made another adjustment to make sure that they were containing Lamar Jackson. Like, they were kind of limiting his ability to scramble. Like, he wasn't getting a lot out of that. And Justin Tucker in the third missed 2 field goals, which that's 6 points. The Ravens lost by what? 5? So looking back, that was a big moment in the game, and it kind of, the Ravens would get right there, and then he missed a field goal, and that's for your team. And while the Ravens were missing field goals, the Eagles also couldn't do anything offensively. So the third quarter was kind of a wash. And then the fourth quarter came around, and the Ravens just couldn't stop Saquon Barkley. He was shredding their defense, running the clock, and he just exploding to the hole through holes. Like, you couldn't do anything with him. And he finally sealed the game essentially with that big 30-yard run where he broke like 2 tackles, and he was just moving so fast. And it just kind of looked like the Ravens couldn't do anything with him. And this game is potentially a playoff preview. Who knows? But I kind of think it showed two things. One, well, a couple of things actually. I think the big thing was the Eagles' resiliency, because they were down 9-0 on the road in a big game. Like, they could have easily just folded, let go of the ropes, but no, they showed that they had grit. They were able to fight back, and they made it a game. Now, I just think the resiliency, they leaned on Jalen Hurts and his versatility, and also Saquon Barkley, obviously doing his thing on the road late in the game. Like, he was amazing, as to be expected. But on the Ravens front, I think the biggest thing that you can take from this, their struggles against the top teams. And I think the biggest thing with that has been execution, and specifically like Tucker's missed kicks and the mixed field goals, because that stuff comes back to bite you. The little things always come back to bite you, those little misses here and there. And it showed up in a big way. And he's been pretty bad this season for his standards. He's leading the league right now in missed field goal attempts and missed kicked attempts in general. And I've seen a lot of people saying like, "Oh, you got to make part ways with him." And I hear it, I understand it, but he also is one of the most accurate kickers in history. Like, I think he's not number one now, but he had like the highest field goal percentage of all time. He moved slightly below to number two, but his legacy and like reputation, you kind of gotta just hope that he turns things around. And that's kind of the one, I guess, hopeful point for them, because if he's not doing his thing, they're gonna need his extra help. But I still think the Ravens are still a formidable team. It was a bad loss, I will say, at home. Um, but I don't think, I guess, people's outlook on the team, I don't think it should drop that much, because I don't think they played a terrible game. But that's all I have on the Ravens versus Chiefs. I'm gonna move on to the Cavs versus Celtics, and I just want to start by saying, yes, the Celtics were missing Derek White and Jaylen Brown, which are two key players on their teams, like their second and third best players. But I still think this game was pretty telling, because in their last matchup, the Cavs were missing Isaac Okoro. They were missing Karis LeVert, missing Darius Garland because he played pretty horrible. But they turned it around in this game. I'm going to start with the Cavs, and I kind of want to – there was 4 players that I kind of want to highlight throughout this game. I'm going to start with Darius Garland, because I just mentioned he had a bad game in their last outing against the Celtics. And in this one, he had a huge bounce back. He finished the game with 22 points, 8 assists on 0 turnovers. That's the big number. No turnovers. So scoring the ball efficiently, making sure guys were getting touches, and especially the bigs, because Donovan Mitchell typically creates on his own, but he was making sure he was feeding Mobley and Allen, especially in the fourth. He struggled defensively throughout the game. He was especially getting picked on by Jason Tatum, but he got a big stop in the fourth quarter, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But moving on, another big key contributor for them was Isaac Okoro. He was 2 for 2 on threes, but each three that he shot was pivotal. It was massive in the game. Like the one in the fourth quarter, I think they were down 5, and they left him open, and he lined it up. He made the three and cut it to a 2-point game. And he also just did a good job bothering Tatum. He had this big chase down block after Evan Mobley threw a turnover where it didn't even look like he could jump anymore. He was already, it's like he double jumped in there and just swatted it away. And Tatum for sure was not expecting that, because you used to see his face after play. He was laughing, and it was a good block. And he played a pretty good game. And it kind of shows you why he's so important to this team, because they didn't have him in the last matchup. Tatum went off. And don't get me wrong, Tatum did his thing again tonight, but it wasn't as easy as before. Now, moving on to Evan Mobley. During the game, I wrote down a few notes. And like as I was writing them down, he kind of fixed them. The first thing was I just said he needed to protect the ball better, because there was a couple times like he'd post up and they were able to poke it away. Or there was one time he got stripped by Peyton Pritchard where if he just held the ball a little higher, that doesn't happen. And also said he needed to go up stronger and then just be more decisive because he had a jump hook like that he tried to shoot. It was blocked by Porzingis, and then late in the third quarter, he kind of got stonewalled where like he was trying to post up, and then he didn't know what he wanted to do, and then he ended up just throwing a bad turnover. And then he had another one like that in the fourth. So it was kind of just cleaning up that stuff. And kind of like right after I started like jotting it down and mentioning it, he switched up his approach. Like he started going at Porzingis like directly in his chest because with shot blockers, to kind of take away their length, you have to hit them a little bit. And he started to realize that and like I can kind of go through this guy. And so his scoring picked up in the fourth. And then he also like throughout the game, and the Cavs have kind of been doing this all season, but they've been running these inverted pick and rolls that the Nuggets do this with Jokic a lot, but the big is basically the ball handler, and you have the guard come set the screen. And if your big is a decent enough ball handler, it just allows for switches to happen, and also for your big to get downhill at an angle. It just makes things a lot easier for him. So, and then also he was getting fed a lot by Darius Garland. Like he was setting him up and doing his job as the point guard. But I think the most important person in this game was Donovan Mitchell. He had a quiet first half. He didn't do particularly much. I think he had about 11, but he came out guns blazing in the fourth quarter and third and fourth, honestly. He dominated just by. I just feel like I kind of compare Ja Morant and the way he's explosive and always has, in the sense that he always, every single game, he's always going to have some type of highlight or like highlight worthy play. I feel the same way about Donovan Mitchell. Like he's so quick and explosive and he has these crazy acrobatic finishes, like crazy bursts, crazy hops. And he has this like super fast spin he does all the time where like you're like, what are you doing? And he'll like split two defenders and like throw the ball out. It's just crazy to watch. But he dominated in this game, especially in the second half. And the biggest thing was he was being guarded by Drew Holiday. So like it wasn't like you had a bum on him and he was just getting off. No, he had one of the best defenders in the league on him. And especially in the fourth, he was torching him. He had 3 big threes in the fourth, and it just felt like he couldn't miss. Every shot he took, every free throw, every layup, everything was just going in. And you can see it on his face. He was having a great time, and the crowd was going crazy, and a great game on the Cavs front. But moving on to the Celtics, they were up 12 in the fourth, and you started to kind of get that feeling like when the Celtics get a big lead in the fourth, it's kind of hard to walk them down because they shoot so many threes. They have so many athletes out there. They're a great defensive team. So the thoughts, they started to creep in. I'm like, dang, this game is over. And that's kind of when Donovan Mitchell took control of things. And the Cavs also had a big stretch when Donovan Mitchell sat late in the fourth because he needed a little bit of rest, where their bench came in and just provided meaningful scoring and just production overall. On the Celtics front, Porzingis is just a major mismatch. Like, easiest way to put it. For whatever team the Celtics face, like, you have a 7'3" guy who can stretch the floor, he's great at helping them get offensive rebounds. He's just bigger than everyone. Like, and the Cavs are running I guess it ended up working because they won the game, but they had Ty Jerome, their backup point guard, guarding Porzingis for like the entire fourth quarter when he was out there. And they kind of had Evan Mobley playing off of Drew Holiday because he's like the Celtics, I guess, worst shooter this season. Not I guess. He has been like one of their, in the starting lineup at least, with those guys, their worst shooter. So he kind of had him helping off, but there was a couple times where Mobley just wasn't able to recover and get there fast enough. So Porzingis would shoot like a fadeaway or mid-range because like he has like a foot over the guy. But the big thing with Porzingis is just his size and his shooting ability. It allows for the Celtics to offensive rebound a lot better because it draws a big away from the basket. And then his shooting, because he loves to stand and shoot that like trailing three at the top of the key, which is one of the hardest spots for bigs to come out to because he's so far away from the basket. Always gets that. He is just a godsend for this team, and they look so much better since he's been back. And they were already a great team, and he just adds another element. And it's kind of, every time, because like last season he was hurt and then they had to reassert him. It's always, you forget how good they are when he's on the floor, and he shows you like time and time again. Sorry about that. And then moving on, there was two other players that I wanted to touch on in this game for the Celtics. One was Peyton Pritchard. He is just such a good player. Like, it is such a luxury to have a guard like that off your bench. A guy who can score in isolation. He can shoot threes. He's not scared to shoot it whatsoever. He can dribble. He is a solid defender, and he just does a lot of things well. And I potentially he could be a starter on other teams throughout the league. So you just have a great quality bench player who can come in when guys are out and produce, and that's exactly what he did. Like, I think the one shot that I was just like, whoa, like he sized up Evan Mobley at the top of the key and then hit him with like a snatchback three, like right in his face. And I'm just like dog, like that's a crazy shot, especially in that moment. Like, you got to have confidence to be able to shoot that shot, and you got to have skill to be able to hit it. So shout out to him. And then lastly, Tatum. He was killing the Cavs all night. Like, they're smaller defenders. Specifically, Darius Garland, I mentioned earlier, he would get him on switches and just post him up, get to a spot, and shoot over him. Like, he was making a killing in the mid-range. Like, he size him up, post him up, shoot right over the top of him, and it's just an easy shot for him. He's bigger than Darius Garland. He's stronger than him, and he's just a great shooter. And he also is hitting tough threes, and Evan Mobley was getting kind of not, I don't think this was purposefully because he's a great defender, but he was getting picked on at the top of the key. Like, Tatum also, similar to Peyton Pritchard, he sized him up, hit like a tough sidestep three on him, and even the announcer is like, that's a tough shot. He's going to settle for that, and he hit it. And the announcer, oh, like, you just got to live with that. You know, that's a tough shot. But it was, but Tatum has been hitting that all season. So it's not a big shocker there. But he had a very solid game, and he was torching Garland up until the fourth. And I mentioned this earlier that I was going to come back to this, but it was a key play where Darius Garland got a stop on him. And I don't know if it was the last minute of the game, I think. But he got a huge stop to kind of help the Cavs end up going up 4. Like, he recovered back on Tatum and forced him to miss a layup, which Tatum doesn't normally do. And it was just a big stop for him. So it was an exciting game overall. And I think this game kind of just shows that the Cavs are definitely number 2 in the East for starters. There's a lot of people, myself included, who has kind of been skeptical about them. But they've showed up and they've showed out, and especially against the Celtics, like both of these games coming down to the wire. And I think a playoff series between these two teams would be must watch TV, because there's so many stars involved. The teams are they have different advantages over one another, and they just play so hard against each other. And the Cavs and Celtics, that's been a rivalry that's been brewing over the years. So even with LeBron gone, the Cavs are still in Celtics. They still go at it. So love to see it. And I'm excited to see how both teams fare out. And that might be an Eastern Conference Finals preview. Who knows? But for my last topic today, I just want to touch on the Michigan versus Ohio State game. This game ended up in a Michigan win, and the final score was 13-10. It was Michigan's 4th straight win and a major upset over the 10-1, now 10-2 Buckeyes. And it was on their home field, which is the biggest thing. I just want to start off by saying this is the only time you'll see me not rooting against Michigan as a Michigan State student, Michigan State fan. And I wasn't hoping Michigan was going to win, but I was hoping that Ohio State lost. OSU, they had a negative 19.5 betting odds against the Wolverines, so they were heavily favored, which is why this was such a big upset. And I just think this game was decided by which team had the least amount of mistakes. Davis Warren, like on Michigan side, he had some bad picks, especially in the red zone, but OSU just couldn't capitalize. And they, like, off one of the picks, they ended up getting a field goal, which they inevitably missed, which if you go back and watch this game, that was one of the key points in this game. But then he followed up with a long drive, and then again, ultimately, he threw a pick on the goal line, and Michigan immediately turned around and got a stop. And I think this was like the deciding point in the game, because getting that stop right off of that pick It kind of helped you regain your composure. It got your guys back in it because it's easy to you throw a pick on the goal line in the fourth. It's easy to put your head down and kind of be like, damn, we're kind of cooked. But no, they fought back, and I think both Will Howard, who's Ohio State's QB, and Davis Warren, they're kind of shaking their heads a bit. They both threw 2 picks, and they're definitely kicking themselves for that. But OSU lost this game because of turnovers and execution. Like I mentioned earlier, that's how this game was decided. Which team had the least amount of mistakes? And my big thing for them, you can't go 1 for 3 on field goals at home. Like that is demoralizing, and you lose games that way. We just saw the Ravens lose a game like on Sunday because they missed field goals. Michigan won the game though with the run game. They had 173 rushing yards, and Khalil Mullins was a beast this game. He had 116 rushing yards on his own, and he was kind of the star of this game for Michigan. But this was a great rivalry win. I don't know why I can't pronounce that word today. It's exciting to watch, and it was exciting to come home. Like my parents were watching the game, super excited about it. They're big Michigan fans, Michigan alumni. Where you see, oh yeah, and I had my green lights up because I couldn't talk about Michigan too much without throwing in some Spartanness. But yeah, it was a great game overall, great rivalry game, and a great TV product. But that's all that I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Peer Review Podcast. Please share the podcast with your friends and family, as well as follow us on X at peerreview_pod and on TikTok at Peer Review Podcast to stay up to date with our latest episodes and releases. This is the Peer Review Podcast, signing off.